We made it out the storm and moved into the light. In love with life, with the sun shining bright. Doing things right, with good things in sight. Trying to stay strong and hold on with all might. I'm a hip-hop junkie, I'll never be a flunky. All I do is rock on dope beats, it's funky. Living my best life, but I know there's more to come. Used to stare at my shoes, now I'm shining in the sun. With my head held high, admiring blue skies. Had to change my outlook, cause tomorrow I could die. So I pray before bed, and I pray before I rise. Looking for the truth, so I'm not blinded by the lies. Had to cut all ties with my old way of thought. Down to who I am.
All right. Thank you and welcome to another episode of Now That We Have Recovered. My name is John W. And today we have on the show Corey. Corey, it's great to have you.
Thank you.
Maybe we could start off with, what is your sobriety date?
11/23 of 13.
Okay, 11/23 of 2013. So you have almost 10 years.
Just over 9 years.
9 years, yeah. Okay.
Just celebrated 9 in November.
Awesome. All right. So why don't we start with the beginning of the end, if you will.
The beginning of the end. So for me, there's two beginnings and there's two ends. So let's start with the first beginning. The beginning of the end of the first one. My wife passed away in 2005. I moved back to Sacramento, caught a CPS case, and from there I found recovery. And just started doing the deal, like everybody says to do. I lived in a transitional living, and I had to go to an outside program and jump through all these hoops through a CPS. And within 6 months, my case was closed, and I had my daughter with me the whole time. I didn't lose her. Managed to stay clean for 2 years and 8 months. Took a trip to Tennessee to see my wife's sister. And we were back there for 3 weeks. And what happened was, on that very last day, I thought it would be okay just to smoke a joint. And by the time I got back, it was within a week, drinking, sticking a needle back in my arm, doing what I was doing. And I managed to do that for the next 5 years. Went from having a home, having my daughter, to not having my daughter, to my daughter raising me, not me raising her. Mm-hmm. The addiction just had a hold of me. Like I didn't know how to get back out of it, Moved a couple of times and tried to get my daughter back in my life. And what had happened is that last move put us out in Esparto, and I couldn't stop. So the law intervened. And I went to jail with a little dope bag in my pocket. And from there, the journey started its way again, That was in January of 2013. And like I said, my clean date is 2013, but it took me from January to November to get that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was trying to get a program, trying to do what probation wanted me to do, to wearing an ankle monitor. Late October, I found myself back in Sacramento. I was living in Esparto, but I had ridden my bike from there all the way out to River Road, and somewhere on River Road, I had that epiphany came over me. It's like, man, what are you gonna do next? I had $2 in my pocket, maybe $2 on a GA card, Mm-hmm. And I just rode my bike off the levee, and just ran in a little bit, and I just sat there and I cried, man. And I was like, what am I gonna do, man? How can I change my life, And I already knew how to do it,
Sure.
Because I'd done this once before, So I remembered this one lady that used to help me in when I met the first time in my first journey. And I was able to gather all my stuff up, my dog and my trailer, and we rode into her house into West Sacramento. And the first words out of her mouth were, "Are you done?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "I think so." And I like to say that was the last time I used, right. Mid-October, but I actually used in her house. I actually rifled through her jewelry,
right,
just to get one more hit, I never took any of her jewelry, and I've since made amends to that woman. But what happened for me was she allowed me to hook up an ankle monitor to her house. She allowed me to live there. She fed me. She bathed me, the first night, and let me sleep on her couch. And from there, my life just slowly started changing. Once I surrendered to the disease.
Right. Let's try to dissect some of that,
Okay.
if you could. That's a lot, which is great. So let's say the first go round.
Okay.
You said CPS intervened.
Mm-hmm.
So you would say that even though it might not have been your initial choice, that still worked.
Yes.
And it worked for a long period. That's good. And so that worked out, you said 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Which is awesome. And then one of my other questions is, so you were out of state, visiting family, and the idea popped in your head, or you had the ability to get some marijuana, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Do you think that being in a new location played a role in that? Somewhere that maybe, I don't know, I have a lot of people that may hold me accountable,
right?
Let's say. And do you think that being in a whole nother state gave some kind of an excuse, if you will?
I think it did, because at that point I thought, well, nobody in my support group knows.
Yeah, right.
So if I could just keep it a secret, I'd be okay.
Yeah. That's the whole, when nobody's looking. That's the real when our real
and
integrity takes hold, if you will.
and just I could just do it this once came in my mind, and it just didn't happen like that.
Right. Yeah, and once leads to many. I hear you.
Right.
Okay, and then so then 5 years of hell, if you will. And then you another intervention, the police arrest, which I totally can relate with.
Yeah.
And you decided to get clean and sober again. What were your motivations different than the first time?
I think they were. I mean, and honestly they were, because a lot of it was like the first time I got clean, it was almost because CPS made me do it.
Sure.
And I had a kid involved, and I didn't want to lose my daughter. And so I think that played a big part of it. And as the second time came around, after my relapse and I came back, it was more of, man, I'm just too tired to keep doing this, So it was more of a me thing, Let's change your life, Corey. Let's do something better.
Yeah.
So I think, it was just the difference of, having it for somebody else and then having it for myself,
Yeah.
And obviously I'm still here because I just celebrated 9 years, so.
Right. All right. Fantastic. Yeah, just a couple of things that were crossing my mind.
And that's not to say that the relapse didn't beat me up either, because that tore me up, and it took me a long time to forgive myself from that relapse. I did a lot of work behind that just so I could get past, hey, man, I screwed up. What do I have to do to make it better?
Yeah.
And that ate me up inside. But, yeah.
And so reconnecting back in, what kind of difficulties that have the second go around, let's say?
It was hard to gain trust, I think, again the second time around.
Okay.
It was definitely harder to gain trust from my family, from my kids especially. It was just it took a while, even for myself, to trust me wherever I was going. I mean, there was times where I didn't belong in neighborhoods that I was in. I was like, what am I doing here? But I managed to get out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just part of that when I had that ankle monitor and I was going to this program, and then I had to meet with probation. I mean, I found myself in a neighborhood that I didn't belong in, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody I knew. So I called my probation officer, and he said, "Come into the office."
Okay.
So I went and sat with him for a while, and he talked me down off the ledge. So
an unlikely lifeline.
Lifeline, right?
But support all the same.
But
That's
support.
Awesome.
I was in a spot, and I didn't want to get loaded, but I did. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how we are.
Yeah.
So and I was able to move on from that, and
I consider it the brain battling the brain.
Exactly.
One part says yes, one part says no.
Right.
So that is an obstacle, which was one of my other questions, is what are some of the early obstacles that you faced in recovery?
So part of being one of the first big obstacles was having that ankle monitor, being able to work around having work, allowing me to wear it while I'm there, having let them know, hey, I'm on this ankle monitor. The police might show up at any time, just to make sure I'm here.
It's a new kind of honesty.
Yeah. Along with that, just the I didn't have the freedom that I wanted at that time. I was allowed to go to meetings. I was allowed to go to work, but that was it. Obstacles after that, again, like I said, was maybe just building that trust back to your family. I didn't have a car. Big obstacle. So I rode my bike wherever I needed to go, to meetings, to wherever I needed to be. You know, my bike was my transportation.
Yeah.
And I stayed that way for probably the first 3 years of my recovery.
Okay.
You know, and then, you know, there was like the job thing, you know, not making enough money to pay rent, or not working enough, you know, or this job just wasn't where I wanted to be, and things changed. You know, I was able to, somebody noticed something in you and you don't see it because we just don't see it and the change I didn't anyway.
Right.
I didn't see the change that was happening within me.
Right.
And other people did. And I got offered another job and paid a little more money. I didn't have to pay rent because I was an on-site manager of a storage facility for the next 2.5 years.
Okay.
You know,
It's a blessing.
Yeah, blessing in itself. And that's part of what recovery has given me, man, just blessing after blessing.
Right.
You know, it's more obstacles. God, I just, you know, it's hard to really, maybe just career things, not knowing where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do next, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that point, I think I was just taking what was given to me, you know, and just trying to be the best I could be, you know, show my kids that, you know, hey, I'm doing what I can do and I'm better now.
Okay.
You know.
So in the beginning, you stayed at a friend's house. You're on ankle monitor. You're starting to get a job. What was recovery, let's say, looking like for you? What did that consist of?
God, it really got good, man.
Okay.
Things really got good for me, you know. I did everything that was suggested. You know, I started working with other people. Doing a lot of meetings.
Okay.
You know, a lot of self-help stuff. You know, that was going to benefit me. A lot of writing. You know.
Yes.
Journaling, whatever it might have been. Just, you know, getting all that crap out of me. You know, then putting it on paper and sharing it with somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and I found that was one of the most relieving things I'd ever done in my life. You know, getting honest was huge. You know. Some of the obstacles, again, you talked about those a minute ago, and you know, having that early recovery was having others around you that you were relying on relapse. You know, and that happened to me.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Know? You know, and it's a hurting feeling. You know, so I had to move on from that as well. You know, but I found that somebody said it the best to me, and I was really being angry, and not angry. I was just upset. I was like holding a resentment towards it, and I said, man, I got to start all this over.
Finding support, you mean?
Yeah, finding a different support. And the gentleman came up to me and he says, no, it's not. No, you don't. It's just a new beginning, Corey.
Sure.
And at that point, that resentment I had was gone. You know, right when he said it, it was like, I didn't think of it like that. But it was just as simple as that for me to accept what somebody else was in their experience, which they experienced. And he told me to say his story.
Sure.
Which was pretty much the same as what happened to him, you know, and it happened to me. So, you know, the obstacles just, I mean, there was a lot of them, but a lot of them were just like, they were like Cadillac problems. They weren't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were just simple things that I could fix, but not having a license. It was just me going back to DUI class and doing a DUI class and paying the money, carrying SR22, and within 6 months I had my license back.
Right.
You know?
Those are big challenges, though, for
Yeah.
people early in recovery.
That really is.
Yeah, so I had to go through the same exact things, and that is what sometimes stops people, I think,
Yes.
from pushing forward in their recovery. Those resentments, and they feel like it's too much, and it's stacking up on them. So that's why I wanted to just kind of ask about some of those obstacles, and that I believe you're right. I mean, the more you just put one foot in front of the other, the faster it comes to us, and the easier our path becomes.
Yeah.
So, all right. What would you say has been your biggest support along the way?
My biggest support along the way would have to be my sister.
Okay.
You know, I've lived with her now for the last 6 years, and she's clean herself. She's, you know, she's got like, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe even more than that. But she supports me no matter what I do, you know. She allows me to live in her house. I pay rent, of course.
Sure.
But she allows me to live there and do my own thing, you know. She respects the fact that I have my own life, and I do, you know, I do a lot of meetings. That's my life.
Yeah.
You know, and I work with others quite a bit. other support would be my kids now, my grandson. That's like the biggest support in my life right now is having that little guy, and in my corner, because he's never got to see Grandpa loaded, ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom, even my mom's been like a big support. She doesn't understand addiction, but she understands that as long as I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm not going to rob her or her neighbors.
Sure.
That's the best way. I like to put it that way, because she always asks me, well, why do you still do that? Well, Mom, I do it because if I don't, I'm going to be over here robbing your neighbors.
Right.
And
It's actually another one of my questions is like, what is your motivation for continuing? I know we talked about the motivation in the beginning. That gets us started. And you have significant time at this point. So what keeps you going?
What keeps me going is so through my career or through my journey per se, I've found a different career, and I kind of have a passion for what I do now. I think my biggest motivation is that I'm tired of seeing people on the streets like they are.
Okay.
I'm tired of driving down Roseville Road and seeing people out there like that.
Yeah.
I'm tired of seeing and hearing about friends of mine or family members or people I don't even know dying of fentanyl.
Fentanyl's a big problem right now. Absolutely.
And I'm too damn old. I'm not that old. I'm 55, but I can't continue to keep doing drugs.
Yeah.
I just made a decision in my life not to do it anymore. There's no reason, So I think that's what keeps me motivated the most is just that, something I try to say to myself every morning when I get up is today my desire to stay clean outweighs my desire to get loaded.
Absolutely.
And I move on from there. That's kind of where my day's at. I mean, motivating. I don't know. That's really a tough question because there's a lot of things that really motivate me. Mm-hmm. But to stay clean, it's a passion. I think it comes from within my heart, man. I just know that I can't get loaded again, and as long as I can give it back to somebody and show them that we don't have to do this no more, that's my motivation.
Okay. What are some of the blessings that you've gained along the way? What are some of the things that's usually a motivating factor from what I see?
Blessings in my life, man. I mean, some of the blessings I received, just my grandson, my daughter. My daughter followed me into recovery. Okay, once I let her do her own thing and stop being codependent and stop being you've got to do it my way. Once I stepped back, she flourished. She's gonna have 2 years in March. Her getting her son back. I just talked about him a minute ago. My grandson, he's a beautiful little dude, and I love him. Yeah. And that's just a blessing,
Absolutely.
Having my daughter in my life is a blessing. Having my sister, my mom, that's not to say that the bad things don't happen and the sour stuff don't happen, I got a little dog. That little dog I talked about on the trailer when I wrecked on the river road. I still have that dog. She's a blessing in my life. Mm-hmm. She's been in my addiction, out of my addiction, in my addiction. Now she's out of my addiction again, I got her clean. I used with her for a long time. I got clean, and now she's still with me, you know what I mean? So it's just been, she's a blessing. She's seen you in the good and the bad. She's seen me in the good and the bad, and this dog still loves me, and she lays next to me at night. Yeah. She's 15 years old. She's been through my whole journey. Okay. Blessings. I mean, it can be as simple as just knowing that I have a bed to lay in, man, that I'm not that person out on Roseville Road, living in a trailer, living in a tent, my blessing, another one would be just knowing that I could be that person to help that next person. Those are blessings to me. It's as simple as that.
What are some of the internal things that you've gained?
Oh man, internal.
Some of those are external, let's say.
Yes.
So and you talked about it comes from within. What are some of the internal things that you believe you've gained?
Integrity.
Yes.
Compassion.
Yes.
Empathy.
Yeah.
And those all come from working a program, whatever that might be for you. Trust. I could go on. I've been able to persevere through a lot of stuff. That's just one of the simple ones. Love, compassion. Like I said, loss. This last year I lost my sister, my stepdad, and worst of all, I lost my dog. I actually had the dog I have now. I've had her daughter with me as well. Okay. And we had to put her down due to cancer. And not that it didn't bother me and it didn't hurt that my sister and my stepdad died, but when that dog died, it broke me apart.
It's it's a different closeness.
It's a different closeness, right? Yeah. And I bawled like a little baby. I still have it on my phone as a reminder, that day happened. But through all that and the loss of my wife 17 years ago or 19 years ago, whatever it was, in 2005, it's allowed me to walk through different types of grief, So it's allowed me to grow up. Put it that way. That's the best way I could put it. It's given me a life. I hate to use the beyond my wildest dreams term because I have some wild dreams,
Sure.
But I really enjoy the person I am today because I wasn't a good person, I just wasn't, I wasn't a person you'd let in your house,
right?
Honestly, when people seen me coming down the street, they lock their doors, turn off their lights,
right?
And then here comes Corey,
Yeah.
Today I'm not like that, I have keys to buildings, I have keys to, other people's cars, I'm trusted wherever I go, So those are some of the gifts that have been given to me, man. It's just the honesty and the integrity that I have today for myself and the way I carry myself, I think is speaks all for itself.
Okay.
So,
yeah, honesty is a big part, I think, of recovery, whether it's earlier or later, really.
Right.
That was one of my main obstacles, I'd say, that I had to overcome in the beginning. My life had been filled with so many lies that I couldn't tell the truth, and so that's why you have to be honest with yourself and others. That was a big obstacle for me, but I think freedom came with that later on. That's one of the things I had gained. Let's circle back a little bit. I wanted to talk about your relationship a little bit. You don't have to go into too much detail with your daughter, and because in the beginning you talked about that roles had reversed a little bit, and I've seen this, experienced it a little bit, and then so she probably becomes more of the adult than we are at a time,
right.
And then you get back into recovery now. So now you got to build trust. You got to that's a hard obstacle basically, and then somehow you guys have to find a way to reverse those roles back again,
right.
Because you're still dad. So
right.
So what did that look like maybe, or what did you experience? What'd you feel? How'd you get through it? Let's say.
So the experience, I think it really hit me hardest when they picked me up from jail. When they picked me up from jail after I went to jail, and she had said, "We're not doing this anymore. Either straighten up or I'm gone." And I think that was an eye opener. Although it took me another 9-10 months to actually get clean,
sure.
And to stop using. So, like, for the next 2 years, it was even, 3 years was really rough, because now she's not living with me anymore. She's living with her boyfriend, and she's partying.
Sure.
So now it's that worry on my end. Now I'm back to being the dad, worrying about, hey, what are you doing? She knew I was clean, but it was like, at the same time, not worrying about me because she knew what I was doing. She knew where I was living. She knew who I was with, so she didn't have that worry of her dad. So, I ain't her trust. It took her a long time. There's still stuff that she has to work through about me.
Sure.
And she is doing, and we've talked about that, and she's talked about some of the resentments she has, and they're valid,
right.
And all I can continue to do is be her dad. Our relationship now is we're like best friends.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm still her dad. And grandpa.
That's right. Yes.
We've just built a relationship we've always had it. So it was really hard not to have that relationship. She was a daddy's girl from the day she was born. And she would go to her mom and ask mom and say no, and she'd always come to dad. Daddy, what did mom say? That's how we do it. But today it's I've had to play that role of mom and dad,
right,
since she was 9 years old. So I think that's where a lot of the hurt on her side came, and then on top of the hurt that she's felt, I've had to work through some of my own stuff at the same time of like, what did I do to her, and how did my actions affect her? You know, and some of those were, she was in her own addiction and I didn't see it. You know, I missed several years with her because I was doing my thing and she was doing her thing, and I wasn't a dad to reel her back in.
There's got to be a dynamic with that too, where now you are a concerned father and you want to help, but who are you to say anything?
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot of dynamic in that.
And now she's grown up. You know, she's 26. She's an adult.
Yes.
You know, so I have to let her live her life. And I think once I did that in her early recovery, once I stepped away from trying to tell her how to do this, she flourished. You know? And that was only through me listening to other people in recovery telling me that, hey, maybe just let her find her own way.
Yeah, and then probably leading by example through your own action.
Yeah, and that's and I hear that from her a lot now. You know, she'll say, Dad, you're awesome.
Good.
You know, I'm glad I followed you. I'm glad you're able to, you know, show me how to do this. You know,
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you got the grandbaby, and all is well.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I got a couple other questions.
Okay.
When and or how would you know that your recovery is in danger? How do you know when you're in a risk of something, or
you know, that's for me. That's a tough one for me to answer because I don't not do what I need to do to keep myself out of risk.
Okay.
You know, I don't put myself in risky positions. You know, I'm not one that goes to bars.
Okay.
You know, I don't. You know, don't get me wrong. I go into restaurants where there's bars and people are drinking. You know what I mean? But I have no desire to fall back to that. You know, now behaviors, sure. You know, there was a time where I lost my cool in a 7-Eleven.
Okay.
You know, guy threw my money back out on the table. I'm like, what the hell? And he said some mean words, and I threw my Slurpee at him.
Oh, okay.
You know, and that was at 6 years, 7 years clean.
Okay.
And I found myself
we're not perfect.
Stewing.
Yeah. Right.
You know, after that, I went over to my girlfriend's house and I was mad at myself, but I was mad at him, and I was like, man, how dare he? But after I stewed in it for a minute, I was like, man, that just wasn't me. And I felt bad for what I'd done. So I went back to that store and I apologized to that man.
Okay.
And he said he didn't care. He didn't want my apology. And I was 86 from that store. I said, that's fine. I just wanted to clean my side of the street.
Yeah, you did your part.
You know, I did my part. So we're human.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't put myself at risk. I try not to. I stay vigilant in what I do. I stay in what I need to be in to keep myself in recovery.
What are those items? What are those things, if you will?
Well, I read a lot of literature.
Okay.
You know, I write a lot.
You mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, and I talk to my support group. You know, that keeps me grounded. You know, that holds me accountable. You know, living with my sister, I'm accountable.
Yes.
Because she, you know, there's no alcohol allowed in our house. You know, and that's just. I don't know what else to go with that question because I'm really just at that point in my life where it's not even a thought anymore, you know?
Right, but you have your routines and they work.
And I have a tape that plays in my head on that if by chance, and like I said, within a week, whatever I have is gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's that fast for me.
Right.
You know, I seen that when I smoked that joint in 2008, you know? Within a week, I was back right where I was, and I left off right where I started, you know, or started right where I left off, however that saying goes.
Yes.
You know, so my routine today is just I stay plugged into what I'm doing. I stay in my literature. I work in recovery. You know,
Okay,
I'm a test away from being certified. You know, I've worked real hard at it. You know, and I have friends and family in the recovery field, and even in recovery, you know, that have supported me 100%, you know, all the way. So
awesome.
I just really like my life today, man. I think had I got this 20 years ago, I'd be, you know, almost set to retire. But, you know, at where I'm at today, it's going to be probably 75, 80 before I could actually retire comfortably. But, you know, it just depends on where my life goes, you know, what I do, you know. So.
One last question.
Okay.
If you were to give advice to anyone in recovery, or give a suggestion, or just an overall message, what would that be?
God, an overall message, man. Give yourself a break. You know, yeah, give yourself a break and just listen to other people. You know, take their advice, because we're not telling you, we're not giving our advice just to give it. We're giving it because we care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would probably have to be my best advice. Just to listen and take it to heart. You know.
It's a great message. All right. Well, that concludes this, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming out, and hopefully we can have you back on soon.
I would love to.
All right.
All right.